Hello, I'm Ashley from Through the Loop Yarn Craft, and today we are going to learn to crochet the feather stitch. This stitch is one of my all-time favorites. It has such great texture and density to it. It looks complicated, but it's really not that hard to do. For this tutorial, I will be using a 4-weight yarn, which is the Lion brand Ferris Wheel in Cotton Candy, also one of my favorite colorways, as well as a 5mm hook. I'm using my Mint Furls Odyssey, and of course you'll need a yarn needle and some scissors. This stitch is a nice and thick stitch, perfect for scarves, hats, and blankets. And don't forget, while you're here, hit that subscribe and like button to let me know you're enjoying the tutorials. Down below, I will also link to the written tutorial for the feather stitch that's over on my blog, which is step-by-step with photos. So if you prefer it written out, you can take a look there. And while you're there, you can pop over and see some of the other free written patterns that I have. So let's gather our supplies and learn to crochet the feather stitch. All right, so we are going to begin our feather stitch with a chain of multiples of 2. So whatever you want to make, you can adjust this for any multiple of 2. And we are going to be crocheting this in rows. So I'm going to start with 20. So there we have our chain using multiples of 2. And as I said, I have done 20. And now we are ready for row 1. So to start our first row, we're just going to do a row of half double crochets to get us started. So we're going to do a half double crochet in the second chain from the hook. So there's 1 and 2. So just make your half double crochet right into that first chain. And then we're going to half double crochet in each chain. And we are on our last stitch for row 1. So I started with a chain of 20, and then we crocheted in the second chain from the hook. So I'm ending with 19 half double crochets. So whatever your starting chain was, your first row should be 1 less than your starting chain. So to get moving on now, to finish off row 1, we're going to chain 1 and turn. So row 2, row 2 is another base starting row, and we're going to start with a half double crochet. I will mention too that your starting chain 1 throughout this whole stitch pattern does not count as a stitch. So our first stitch will always be working right into the stitch under your chain, that very first stitch there. So we're going to do half double crochet and then chain 1. Now we're going to skip this next stitch and work another half double crochet into the stitch after the skipped stitch. And chain 1. And we're just going to repeat that all the way across. So we're going to skip this next stitch, half double crochet into the next stitch, and then chain 1. So now that we've gotten to the last 2 stitches, we're going to skip this next stitch and we're just going to make a last half double crochet into the very last stitch. So finishing up row 2, I have 10 half double crochets and 9 chain spaces. So we will now chain 1 and get ready for row 3. Okay, so here we are for row 3, and row 3 is where we begin with the feather stitches. So to begin, we're going to start with a half double crochet into this very first stitch. So right under your chain 1, we're going to half double crochet right into that first stitch and chain 1. Perfect. So now we are going to begin with the feather stitches. So feather stitches have about 3 parts to them, and that's what gives them the gorgeous texture and the density of the stitch. So begin with a yarn over and insert into this first chain space and pull up a loop. Now for this stitch, you also want to make sure you aren't holding tight tension. You want to be nice and loose and pull up that stitch to match your half double crochet. Yarn over. And now we're going to insert our hook into the skipped stitch from the previous row, right down in there. And then grab that and pull up a loop. Again, you want to pull that nice and tall to match your other stitches. And this is why we don't want to have that really tight tension. And for the last yarn over, this time we're going to insert our hook into the next chain space. Yarn over, bring up that loop, pull that up nice and even there again, yarn over, and we're going to pull through all 7 loops on our hook. Then we will chain 1 to finish that off. So as you can see, if you hold really tight tension, it's just going to squish the stitch and it won't have that luxurious look that it has. So now for starting the second and remaining feather stitches of the row, we're going to begin by inserting our hook into the same chain space we just used. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull up your loop, 3 loops on my hook, and now we're going to again insert our hook into this the skip stitch from the previous row, right under the chain space. Yarn over, insert that, pull up your loop, wiggle that nice and high, and now we will have the 5 loops on our hook, and yarn over, insert into the next chain space, pull up your loop. Now we've got our 7 loops on our hook, so we can yarn over and pull through all 7 loops and chain 1 to finish that off. Now, if you have trouble pulling through all 7 loops, I find it very helpful when I'm pulling through. I tip my hook down and back a little bit, the point to the back, and it pulls through much smoother than trying to pull it through this way or just down and kind of facing forward. So now we're going to continue on just like that one for the remainder of the row. So again, we're going to start in the same chain space we just used. Pull up your loop. And we're going to work our next part into this skipped stitch below the chain space. And then the third part, yarn over and insert our hook into the next chain space. Pull that up. With 7 loops on our hook, we can now yarn over and pull through all 7 loops and chain 1. So we can just continue that across until we get to the end, and I will show you again how to finish off the row. Once you've finished this last feather stitch, utilizing this chain space with just the one leg, we're going to just complete that stitch with our chain 1 and then yarn over, and we're just going to make a half double crochet into this very last stitch and chain 1, and that's row 3. So for row 4, we will just turn our work and get ready. So turn your work, and we're ready for row 4. Row 4 is going to be our repeat row, where every row after that will be just like row 4. So we're going to begin again with our half double crochet into the first stitch and chain 1. So now we're ready for our feather stitches. So again, we're going to yarn over and insert into that chain space right below. Pull up your loop. Now we don't have skipped stitches for this row, but we do have these spaces from the creating in the previous row. So we're going to insert into this space right below. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull that up, yarn over, and since we again don't have that same chain space, we're going to insert our hook on the opposite side of the previous feather stitch. So right in this hole here. And pull that loop up, yarn over, and chain 1. So let's go through that one more time with the next stitch. So again, we're going to yarn over, and we're going to utilize that same space we just finished with. So right here, pull up the loop. And as you can see, we're going to go into this next open stitch right below here. So yarn over and pull up that loop, yarn over, and again working into the opposite side of this space between these next two feather stitches. Yarn over and pull through, chain one. And we're just going to continue that across. And one more. So to finish up that last feather stitch, we're going to work, it might be a little hard to find, we're going to work into this chain space right before the last half double crochet. So yarn over and into that chain space, pull up your loop, chain one, and then again, we're going to half double crochet into this very last stitch. And chain one. And then you would turn your work and ready for the next row. So let's try it one more row just to make sure we've got that repeat down. And then we should be good to go to create anything you'd like with a gorgeous feather stitch. So remember, starting off, always start with your half double crochet into that first stitch and chain one. So yarn over into that first space, pull up your loop, yarn over into the space right below, pull up your loop, yarn over into the space between the next two feather stitches, pull up your loop, yarn over, and pull through all your loops, chain one. Now we're going to yarn over, insert into that same space, yarn over right below, yarn over in between the next two. So now now that we've got it down, we can get going and just finish crocheting right across, remembering to use these spaces that are in between the feathers. And remember, using this chain space right after the last one, pull up that loop, chain one, and then half double crochet into the top of that last stitch. There you are. Now you have learned to crochet the feather stitch. Thank you so much for joining me today and learning to crochet the feather stitch. Do hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. I have a very, very dear love for this feather stitch. I just think it's absolutely stunning, and it really works well with ombre type yarns. If you enjoyed the tutorial, hit that like and subscribe button, and I will link below as well to a couple of written patterns I have using the feather stitch, and you can check those out as well. So again, thank you so much for joining me today, and I can't wait to see you next time.